Have you ever seen something in nature so perfect, so geometric, you just assumed it had to be man-made? Well, today we're diving into one of nature's most incredible and mysterious works of art, the massive hexagonal patterns you find in salt flats. The truth behind them is way more amazing than you might think. I mean, just look at this. It's like a perfectly tiled floor stretching out to the horizon. The shapes are so unbelievably precise, so uniform. Your first thought is, no way, someone had to have made this. But they didn't. So the real question is, how on earth does nature pull this off? You know, if you ever get the chance to visit a place like the Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia or Badwater Basin in Death Valley, you're basically stepping onto another planet. People have called it an infinite dance floor made of these giant shimmering white hexagons. This isn't random. It is pure, natural, mathematical order. So that's what we're gonna do. We are going to decode the physics behind these incredible salt flat polygons. We're gonna figure out how this epic battle between the sun, the water, and the fundamental laws of geometry creates this absolutely spectacular tiled floor. Okay, so to really get this, we have to start with something super simple, a process that, honestly, we've all seen before. It all begins with something as basic as wet mud drying out in the sun. Right. So think about a patch of wet ground. When it's soaked with water, it swells up. But then as the sun beats down and all that water evaporates, the soil starts to shrink. And this shrinking creates this incredible tension across the whole surface. The ground is literally pulling itself apart. And there's a scientific name for this. It's called tensile stress. But all that really means is a pulling force. Eventually, that tension just gets to be too much, the ground can't take it anymore, and snap! A crack forms to release all that built-up energy. You see the exact same thing happening with peeling paint or at the bottom of a dried-up lake. But here is where that simple explanation just completely falls apart. Because if you look at typical mud cracks, they're all over the place, right? Random shapes, lots of sharp 90-degree angles. Salt flat polygons, though, they are perfect, uniform hexagons. Every angle is precisely 120 degrees. And the biggest clue? A mud puddle cracks once, and that's it. It's done. These salt patterns, though, are part of a dynamic, living process. So simple drying, that is not the whole story, not even close. So what was the missing piece? For decades, scientists really only had part of the answer. But a huge breakthrough finally revealed this hidden force at work, a kind of powerful engine constantly turning away just beneath the surface. And get this, that breakthrough only happened in 2023. This is brand new science we're talking about. For all that time, we were all looking at this incredible phenomenon with the biggest piece of the puzzle just missing. So what they found was this constant heartbeat under the ground. See, these salt flats aren't solid. They're actually more like a giant porous sponge that's filled with incredibly salty water, what we call brine. And the key is that brine is always moving. And it works like this. First, the sun heats up the brine right at the surface. As that water evaporates, the salt gets left behind, which makes that top layer of water super dense and heavy. So what does heavy stuff do? It sinks. That heavy, salty water plunges down into the soil, and that pushes the lighter, less salty water from below up to the surface to replace it. And the whole loop starts all over again. This whole process actually has a name. It's called Rayleigh-Benard convection. The water under the ground is constantly rolling over and over in these little circular cells. And this is the real secret. As that heavy, salty water sinks down along the edges of these cells, the evaporation on top leaves behind salt crystals. And over thousands of years, that process builds up the raised ridges that form the beautiful hexagons we see. Okay, so we've got our underground salt engine figured out. But that still leaves one really big question. Why hexagons? Why not squares, or triangles, or circles? Well, it all comes down to the simple, elegant laws of math and efficiency. So let's just ask it straight up. If you need to tile a massive surface with a repeating shape, and you want to do it in the most efficient way possible, what shape do you pick? The answer comes from a core principle of physics. Nature is lazy. And I mean that in the best way possible. It always looks for the path of least resistance, the way to get something done using the absolute least amount of energy. In this case, that means covering the most area using the shortest possible boundary, or wall. And when you run the numbers, the hexagon is the undisputed champion. It's not even a contest. Triangles and squares need a much longer perimeter to tile this same amount of space. But the hexagon, it gets the job done with the least amount of material. It is perfection. So it all boils down to this magic number, 120 degrees. When 3 of those cracks meet, the most stable, most balanced arrangement, the one that spreads out that tensile stress most evenly, is for them to meet at 120-degree angles. And what's the only shape made up entirely of 120-degree angles? A perfect hexagon. And hey, if that sounds familiar, it should. Bees figured this out millions of years ago. They build their honeycombs with hexagonal cells for the exact same reason. It is the single most efficient way to store the most honey using the least amount of wax. It's just nature's perfect solution. Now, for the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, this might be the most incredible part of the whole story. Unlike a simple patch of dried mud, this landscape is, in a very real way, alive. So just think about it. What happens if this perfect pattern gets disturbed? Let's say a truck drives across it and crushes those delicate salt ridges. In a normal dried up puddle, that damage would be there forever. But not here. Because that underground salt engine, that constant convection cycle, is always running. It never stops. It continuously brings new, super salty brine up to those ridges. And over time, it deposits new salt crystals, effectively healing the damage and rebuilding the perfect geometric pattern all over again. So the next time you see one of these landscapes, remember what's really going on just below your feet. The ground isn't just sitting there, it's an active, dynamic system. I think this quote says it best. The ground isn't just rock, it's a calculator, constantly solving for the most efficient shape in the universe. And the answer it finds, again and again, is the perfect hexagon.